But okay, welcome, welcome to this women leaders online next network. And Erica is going to share by chat, so we'll keep an eye on the chat as well. And the meeting's being transcribed as well. So welcome to all of you. I don't know all of you, but my name is Dr. Pauline Crawford, and I am director of the International University of Entrepreneurology, and also I run Corporate Art International. And I'm delighted that Mary Hall's here today because we are in league together to change the world, especially the world of women, to be an amazing force and credential across the world. I called this session Rise to the Challenge. And Dana says, happy to have Dr. Pauline leading the charge of positive change. I just had a very interesting conversation with a lovely consultant who's in England, but she's also from being in South Africa at the African Women Entrepreneur Innovation Forum.
Yes, yes.
It's amazing how, hi, Gloria, good to see you. It's fascinating what's happening across the world for women. And I'm very glad to see we have a man online here with us. Thank you for joining us from Estonia.
A very ugly form of woman, I have to say.
Okay, good. So Stephanie as well. And Stephanie and Dana, your sisters, I believe, is that right? Excellent.
Today we are.
Good. So we've got different, maybe also write in the chat which country you're coming in from, and you know where your connectivity is. So looking at the idea of how women rise to the challenge, I suppose the question is, what is the challenge? Now, there could be many different challenges that we each have as women, or that we know about women in the world. What we do know is that half the world is female, and I love demographics. So I'm always fascinated by figures, and the fact if you look at the demographics of every country in the world, you'll find that the chart, whether it's wider or shorter, is half male, half female in every age band. But also we know that half the world is under 30. And out of the world that's under 30, there's more or less the same number of men and women. I think there's slightly more men at the moment, but it's marginal. So we got a situation where I think for me, the rise to the challenge is rising to the challenge of being joint custodians of the world. And I want you just to ponder on what that means. And I'm very glad to have a man here today. So a joint custodian of the world, that we actually share how we manage the world, how we run it, if we want that word, how we excite it, how we encourage it. How do we understand how we utilize all the talents that are sitting in these different parts of the world, and that we know that many women are marginalized in lots and lots of different ways, and maybe men are as well too, but let's focus on women and understand how do we express our talents to the world that is conditioned by, in many ways, the traditional nature of men designing our world. So one of the things that we do in the International University of Entrepreneurology is that we have a new way of creating a credential for all people, men and women, but it's called a professional higher doctorate. So if you take those letters, PhD, my doctorate is a PhD, not a academic P small hd. And it's an alternative to academia, not a replacement, but it's an alternative because your life is your credential. And that's what we're looking at in terms of women in particular, because we're focused on women today. What is the life that a woman who is a very successful entrepreneur, business owner, has developed, author. You know, we were talking today with Dana earlier about how we accelerate our presence in the world through books. How do we express ourselves, and how do we become those giant custodian of the world and share all our talents? And how do we help the young demographic under 30, and especially the 18 to 30s who just left school and maybe don't know what the hell they're going to do next? And the traditional way is not always open to them for many, many reasons. And there is a feeling that many of them actually don't want to go that way. I was privileged to live in Malaysia for 4 years in 2014, 2018, and worked with a lot of women there. And so many of them were amazing entrepreneurs. But I tell you, every single one who had a very small business wanted to start a foundation. And I would say to them, well, you haven't made any money yet, not of any considerable amount, and you want to start a foundation. Why? And they would say to me, because I don't want other women to go through what I had to go through. So inevitably their foundations were about women, about health for women, about homeless, about domestic violence, abuse. And that was consistent. So I'm not saying that men don't do this, but men don't do this. Generally, men make their money, and then if they're a social entrepreneur, they give money back. But what we're talking about here is the nature of women and how we are potentially joint custodians of the world, and whether or not we can really understand how we add value and how we can qualify that on a new system. So what we're looking at is how your earned PhD becomes relevant in a world that needs you. So I want to open the floor to understand where you're all coming from and what your view is. And as I say, we're not saying that academic success is not useful, but we were talking this morning, Mary and I, and Mary said something very relevant, so I'm going to quote you, Mary. Success is not guaranteed by academic qualification or capability. A holistic life journey and an SME understanding is a holistic way of being creative and understanding our emotional and how we give back. So I'd like to share what Erica's just put into the comments as well. With a huge demographic being under 30, they're instrumental in creating change because they tend to be more open-minded and focus less on difference and more on going forward together in the world. We need to be the leaders encouraging this so the tide can shift. So I'd love you to introduce yourself and just comment on how would you be a joint custodian of the world? Who would like to go first?
I'd like to hop in only because I have to leave in the next 20 minutes, and I want to be a part of this and supporting it. Thank you for sharing the stats too, Dr. Pauline, regarding 50% of the population being 30 and under. I was not aware. Wow, that's significant. And to speak to something that Erica was talking about, and you as well, in terms of that age population, what I learned is that those that are in my age category, we tend to want to have it all spelled out and all outlined and everything in place before we hit go.
Yeah.
And that population is absolutely different. And I'll give you a quick scenario. I met this young lady online who was selling something from Etsy, and I needed one particular product from her. Well, she brought the other products that she had, but she hadn't come up with a name nor a label, but she was selling them. And I would never, ever would have done that. I hold myself back in the generation that I'm in, thinking that everything has to be lined up, outlined, done perfectly, and you know, the website done and this done. And really, that's a hindrance for really making that change and the impact, because what we have or need, whether it's a product or a service, if we get it out there, we can refine it. Or as they say, you build the plane as you're flying. And I do believe in planning, but I do see the value in sometimes you just have to jump where you are and improve as you go.
Yes. And that's an interesting word, Dana, that, you know, we need to prove ourselves. One of the things I just want to share is that I've always said this, that women mean business, but we don't need to be mean to be in business. Women bring life to business. We bring a very holistic view. So being joint custodians, why do we have to prove it any other way than proving our own earned story? Gloria, did you want to say something? I saw you.
Oh, you're calling on me? You know, it was probably a thought thing that hit the screen. But what was in my mind at the time, that I attended a holiday networking event last week, and I met a woman there who is an executive coach and leadership. But Pauline, she was so negative. And she just felt that leadership among young people is in the negative realm and they're not willing to listen. And she decided if she's going to work with the company, she has to let them know up front that if they're not ready to listen, she's not. I mean, it was just so hard to listen to. And I thought, boy, I sure hope she's wrong because I don't look at life that way. I think that our young people today are curious. I think that they're more, as Erica said, they're much more open. I have more hope for them. I really do than what she does. So I feel like I'm going to have to go out there and override what she's saying. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. So one of the things we say is that our core human right is to think for ourselves. And that's what entrepreneurists do, entrepreneurs. We think for ourselves. We create our own destiny. We ask help and we have conversations with other people, but essentially we're determined and persevere in our way. So again, you know, how can we become not like the lady you refer to? And you know, and also I think one of the biggest challenges, we talk about intergenerational wisdom. How do we share? I'm a very mature lady. I'm 75. I'm not the same as an 18-year-old. But how can I share my wisdom by listening and truly listening and not being like the lady you say? Okay.
Yeah, yeah. I think we have to really focus on not falling into that trap and
Yes.
buying into that attitude. And really, I think we're all going to be overriding a lot of this negativity that's out there. Certainly it's everywhere, but for me, in my mindset, that's going to be our biggest challenge. And we need us to override what's out there so it can go into a more confident, happier place. Does that make sense?
Yes, absolutely. I give you an example. I was on a call with Tanzania with Nima, who was hoping to come in today, but Nima invited me, and I suggested to the young people, they were between 18 and 30, how can you be non-judgmental? Get into conversations. Oh, Nima's there. So how can you go into conversations without judgment? And one of the questions was, why does judgment turn up? Why do we become judgmental at any age? And that's a really interesting thought, is can we, to be joint custodians of a different world, I don't mean be joint custodians of the world we've got, but actually change it. We have to be not judgmental about what has been, because we get into the trap of getting stuck with our own perceptions and preferences. So who else would like to share their thoughts on this?
Can I call on somebody?
Yes, please, Gloria.
I'm calling on Stephanie because she has a very strong faith-based attitude to life, and I think it's refreshing.
Well,
Stephanie, you're on.
thank you, Gloria. I appreciate that. I would say, and from my faith, judge not, and you shall not be judged, right? And it's difficult. I would say it may be challenging for some because if you're accustomed to being around a certain population, like I was on this diversity and inclusion organization early on before it even started being an issue because we had some challenge in the healthcare system that I was working in at the time. And you just have to accept people for where they are and look past anything, that may cause you to pause. It's about the heart. If you just think about the heart of the person And so therefore, I'm lightly seasoned. I'm up there, right? And I have children. That's my oldest is 33, a 26, and a 23, And I've had to pivot. I had to adjust because I was like, this is who they are. I grew up, Dana and I grew up, you're going to college, you're going to finish college, you're going to get a degree, you're going to work on your master's, you're going to work on your doctorate. That was just it. So that was ingrained, and I was trying to ingrain that in my children. And, one of my daughters, all my kids went to college. However, I had to step back and realize college is not for everyone. And they had other skill sets and things that they want to do so they can blossom. So working in healthcare, I had over 250 people that reported up to me. Everyone's not alike at all. And you have to learn the art of listening and accepting. Okay. And I think it's a saying, in order to be accepted, you have to accept. So you have to accept someone for where they are, regardless of what they look like, what their gender. And yes, I'm a Christian. I'm a woman of God. I love the Lord. I have no judgment of anyone's sexuality, because if anyone who sins, as the word said, cast the first stone, and we all come short. And so it's not saying that anyone is sinning. The point I'm saying is that I accept people for where they are, and so that they can accept me for where I am. And as a woman, from a perspective as a woman and men, I think there's a lot of collaboration that will be great. I've worked in executive levels where I was mainly the only woman at times, or the only woman of color. And how do you get your voice heard? How do you do that and not people stereotype angry Black woman because I'm sharing my thoughts. So I had to adjust my presentation for the audience that I'm in. Now, initially growing up, I'm thinking like, why do I need to adjust? I'm saying and then I'm from New York. So, New Yorkers, we have to say, talk with our hands, and people may feel agitated or feel that that's aggressive, but it wasn't in Rome. In Rome, you do what they do in Rome. And I had an executive leader who was a male who said, Stephanie, I need you to slow down. And I need you not to use your hands so much because it appears as though you're upset and you're angry. I'm like, no, I'm just talking. People like, how do you get to the Brooklyn Boulevard? What you do? You go down the street, you go down there. Da, 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 da. That's just normal for us. But you have to adjust and adapt. And I think that's what it's about. The population is 50% 30 and below. You have to adjust and adapt because they do need us to provide wisdom. But how do we provide that wisdom without being judgmental and hearing them and accepting their out of the box thinking?
Absolutely.
Sorry, I said a lot.
One of the things I feel is that I was saying this to Zazie when we first came in, is there's no such thing as a difficult person. Now, would you all believe that? I've tried this on audiences live. You ask an audience, how many of you are a difficult person? Now, in England, you'll get one person put their hand up. In America, you'll get several people put their hand up. In Malaysia, nobody will put their hand up. But if you ask the audience, how many difficult people do you know? Every single hand goes up. So to me, this is about this judgment thing. If we're going to be joint custodians, we've got to step into a different type of conversation where we can prove that we're meant to be there at the table just by being in the table. This idea of leaning in.
Absolutely.
So, anybody else like to share? I see, Zazie, you've got your line open. Do you want to say something? Yeah.
I can do. I'm not sure if anyone can hear me. Everyone
We
can
can hear
me.
you.
So lovely to be here. Thank you so much for the opportunity. And hi to Nemo, who's actually working with us already. It's just a fascinating conversation for me. I think everything that Mika and I are doing alongside Nima and very many other special people are kind of really having to approach business much from the perspective you're talking about, where we're doing things in a slightly unconventional manner. We're building a global video-based directory and marketplace for SMEs. And then we have an additional initiative running in tandem which is in partnership with United Nations and various other organizations to get the marginalized businesses and informal traders, the young people, sort of young entrepreneurs, more formalized and into a training program, which is free for 2 years, so that they can move then into the directory. And we're focusing on Africa at the moment. I'll get back to where the synchronicity is. But it's a 7-year work in progress. Many people booed it from the beginning, thought it was a crazy idea, and it's really evolved into an exercise in learning to appreciate the art of possibility and really recognizing that in people, regardless of age. And we're also just so incredibly grateful because we are kind of currently in 27 participating countries, starting to onboard businesses and build a team. And we have just met the most unbelievably fascinating people from all walks of life, all sorts of qualifications, but everybody interested most importantly in the fact that the sort of vision, let's say, behind Oneism is really about creating an initiative that belongs to everybody who wants to be a part of it, and really about creating a space where the businesses we want to have an impact on, we will do well because they're actually doing well. So it's just so inspiring to hear all of you talking, because I think it's about exactly this thing. And sometimes just absolutely that unwavering belief in what you believe you have to do to create that footprint or to share your thoughts. And I think in terms of being universal custodians, probably not the best way to phrase it, but I think men and women effectively are universal mothers. We should all be taking care of each other, and that lovely overused, underappreciated South African phrase of Ubuntu, where we really are exist because I'm well because you're well, and so many complexities attached, but we've all forgotten what that really means. And I think that transcends gender and age and all sorts of things. Sorry, that's probably a long long babble.
Well, I think it's interesting to hear the words that we're saying, because, you know, apart from, what's your partner's name? What is your name?
Mika, Finnish name, Mika.
Excellent. Apart from you, everybody here is female, and we do lead a different life to men, and we all want to get around the table. We love to talk, we love to converse. And as I said, you know, we have a natural entrepreneurial spirit just being in the world, I think, but that's, you know, my bias about being a woman. That if we are truly joint custodians of the world, we need to understand the language and understand, you know, what words we're using around the table. So I want to just explain one of the things that happened to me when I wrote my book, The Power of Authentic Harmony, was that I'd had a COVID experience. My husband was in COVID, nearly died, and I had about 2 or 3 months out of the world, getting him better. When I came back into some semblance of normality in 2022, I looked at what was going on and I thought, we're still struggling with this idea of gender equality. I think we need to say goodbye to equality, hello to harmony. And just a simple shift of the word made a difference. Because if we said to many traditional men equality, they would freeze and go, oh. Whereas if you say harmony, they would go, oh, I like that. So just by shifting the words, and, you know, the idea of a joint custody world could sound awesome to some people and could sound challenging to some people, but it's the idea that we get round the table and we really sit with our listening potential to not judge, but to share our experience. So what we say in our University of Anthropology is it's about experiencing knowledge, experience, and imagination. So I want you to imagine what a world would look like, feel like, be like, if we truly had half the table, female, male, whatever generation it is, but to share on this idea of thinking for ourselves and really understanding the joy of harmony. Linda, you said you have to go, but good to see you. Good to see you. Who would like to share? I was going to invite Nima, whether you would share your thoughts on this idea of a joint custody world and women being identified as definitely credible. Are you there, Nima?
I'm here, but I thought I'm learning from all of you today. And maybe one thing I would share is that I remember when I started working, and when I was young, I'm still young, but not so young. And the stereotypes that you get from the office, that you are young and how can you lead us, and you are a woman, and all that. But the only thing that maybe someone can do is proving that you're capable of doing it. And I think in all this, it's what being in the room with you this week and last week with all the youth, it reminded me of the journey. We all start somewhere, and I felt like the youth who are being trained by you, and they are very blessed, and to get this to get someone guiding them in the way and how the world is, and how the harmony, using the harmony like men and women working together in the same uh, in peace, and also removing the notions that I am better, you are better, but we are all equal. And I just love this phrase of bye to equality and welcoming the harmony. And I think this is the way to go right now. And it will help in so many ways. And like removing the gender will help women to own land. In my culture, in Africa, women, we are not inheriting land. We cannot own land. But I think with all this, it will help us also to own land, to be in leadership positions and other many things. Thank you so much. And also having men as allies. And thank you, Mika, for joining and reminding us on that. Thank you, Dr. Pauline.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Nima. And I think that's, to my experience of the Global Chamber, it's been my experience that there is harmony in the Global Chamber. So I hope all of us who are members and come here regularly, there is definitely harmony. There's no distinction between having to prove yourself or not. And I think the Global Chamber of Commerce is a really good example of where women can stand out as themselves. But as Nima alluded to, so often there's a need to prove ourselves. And I want to share a quick story about a lovely lady in South Africa who is a royal bloodline, and she's the first female to be the royal bloodline in this particular large community in South Africa. And she had to prove that she was the bloodline, but she was the first woman. So she is called the woman king because the role is a king role, and that's the title. So she is the woman king. And I met her in Las Vegas. She was at a conference here a couple of years ago. And I got very confused because they kept on announcing that the king was arriving. And I was thinking, but and so I had to get my head around the king being female. But I've got to know her, and she loves the idea of harmony. And I asked her one time, she was at the UN at the International Women's Day event. And I asked her, why do you think we do not have full gender equality? And she said to me, because women don't understand themselves and each other and our level of competency, we don't need to compete with men. Would you agree? And she said, I can do anything a man can do, but I do it as a woman. And she said that in a very gentle way. Now, the other thing I asked her, and I'd like you to consider, I said, how did women respond to you taking on this role? And she said, well, interesting, there were three types of women. There was a woman who said, I'm with you, fantastic, but don't tell anybody I'm with you. And then there was the woman who said, I'm with you and I'm standing right beside you. And then there was a woman who said, you shouldn't be doing this. It's a man's job. And I found that really interesting because I think there is that conflict in the world about what is a woman and our ability to just be ourselves, to be competent and charismatic and compassionate and caring and incredibly good at commerce. Would you agree?
Yes, absolutely.
Absolutely. So how that is, I think, is for me what, when I say rise to the challenge, is how can we present our credentials to a world that is currently still defined by a very traditional way of identifying. So I just would like to share that thought. And I was going to see who else would like to comment on the call today. Christina, would you comment? We've had a lovely conversation about this. Are you there?
Sorry, yes, I am here. I happen to be in a lobby of the hospital right now, so I'll just talk quietly. But it's so interesting just listening to this whole conversation. The concept of alliance and collaboration is great, but looking and recognizing the strengths of what is traditionally feminine is extremely problematic. And what is very ironic is the core base for leadership. And if you look at the research on business leadership and what they're requiring now, they are the so-called soft skills, and they're critical, and they're one of the most difficult skills to acquire, even for some women when they're busy accommodating the masculine model of business leadership.
Do you think, how would you see a way that we can take ownership of what you just said, the strength of what is feminine leadership? I sometimes wonder it's about how we own it as women.
There's the $1,000,000 question, right? Um, I I think that I think we need to be authentic. I think that's it. I think there's been far too much compromising in the past in terms of women accepting and conforming to the masculine traditional dialogue and the nomenclature and everything that goes with that. So I think that we need to be very authentic and not shapeshifters.
I love that. I think that's a brilliant commentary. And I think one of the things is that people get very upset with me about, we should get rid of differences, ignore differences. I don't want to ignore differences because I think that's what makes us uniquely us. Everybody is unique. And even when we look at the strength of what is feminine leadership, we are multifaceted as women, which is possibly why men see us as so complex. I interviewed 55 men back in 2018 about the Me Too movement. And I asked them the question at the end, because the interview was just about men, about what do men think about men? But I asked them at the end, what would you advise a woman to do to be, what would you advise a woman to be like with a man? And the answer came back as, don't mother us, don't smother us, and don't treat us as a threat. Because in the Me Too movement, there were some men who felt that they were being seen as a threat when they weren't. If a man was walking down the road with his young daughter, he might be seen as, is he taking that? Is he something not that he isn't? But it was don't smother us, don't mother us, or see us as a threat. And I shared this research with many women, and some women said to me, oh, don't worry, Pauline, we'll go and sort him out. Now, that's not, for me, that's not the answer either. So we need to be able to, you know, be authentic in our difference and our uniqueness. And then I want to go back to this question to all of you is, how do we own it? How do you own your authenticity as a woman? Say you walk into a room full of men, how do you own your authentic self? Does anybody like to share?
That's a very risky process if you think about it. And it's hard. It's easier the older you get. But when you're driven to succeed, you want to, I'm thinking of, my students as they go out into the workplace. I try to teach them the authenticity and to claim their voice and ownership. But I also think that there lies some responsibility in terms of the male's responsibility for allowing space. And I remember talking to you about the book Athena Rising that suggests that men have a better chance of promoting women in business leadership because women are sabotaging each other. So I think if women support each other in their authentic endeavors, even without the male input, it would make a huge difference. But women tend to be, in many instances, undercutting of each other because it's such a competitive space for women.
Well, thank you for saying that, because I think, you know, this is where the space where we can be honest, and it is a two-way street. It's not just about, but how do we as women own our authenticity? One of the things with anybody who has a different perspective, we may see as difficult. So one of the things we can do is to say, well, that's an interesting perspective, and smile eloquently and move on. I've tried this tactic, and the reason I say it is that we need to pause the potential difficulty by saying something which could potentially be uplifting. So if we can compliment somebody without being inauthentic, it will enable them to lean towards us. Would you
Wow.
agree?
If I can say something,
Yes, Gloria.
when I walk into, and this is just the way I've always been, and I don't know why, I just am. But when I walk into a room, I don't, especially if it's a sea of men, maybe 70% men, very few women, certain I've had many of those occasions. I don't think of myself as being a woman. I really don't. I don't put a gender on it, but I do think of myself as someone who has something to say and something to contribute. So to me, that's a non-gendered thing. And that's usually where my mindset is. But I really don't think of gender when I walk into a room, even if it's predominantly men. If I've got something to say, I've got something to offer. So here it is.
Absolutely. And exactly what you've said is a bit about being authentic as a person. And that's what I think is really important, that we own ourselves as a person in that room. Well, unfortunately, a lot of women don't do that, and men take a disadvantage, you know, an advantage or disadvantage over a situation. So really, what you said, Gloria, is absolutely spot on. We are authentic by being okay about the uniqueness of people in the room.
Mhm.
But if we do get challenged, then taking ownership of our sense of who we are as a woman or as a man is really important. And I've
One time I did get a backlash. I'm sorry to interrupt
Yeah.
you. Backlash where one gentleman did say to me, "Well, you're a woman. Women think like that." And I said, "Well, I hadn't noticed." He didn't know what to say or where to go.
Well, that's right. And having a good sense of humor is part of our authentic confidence in ourselves. Dana, you got your hand up.
Yes. I really appreciate the question too. And how do we show up as our authentic selves? Stephanie touched on this earlier. For the most part, I think I show up as my authentic self. I know that this space within our global chamber tribe really allows that more so. So I find freedom there, but I'm also mindful of the audience. I'm mindful of culture. I'm mindful of patriarchal order. I'm mindful of who I am as a woman and how they perceive me based on the patriarchal order. And if I wanted to get a message across, is it something I deliver directly to the male that's in leadership there, or do I have to go through? It's a lot of work. It's a lot of work for us as women. And sometimes also for being a woman that's a minority, there's a whole nother element. And you may have not heard of the term code switch, but you have to turn on a different switch depending on where you are. And it's exhausting. So I really love the freedom that we have right here in this space, that we
Yes,
can show up earnestly, honestly, authentically, and grow. We're not threatened, we're empowered by this harmonious exchange.
absolutely. And thank you for sharing that, because being authentic means, for me, valuing yourself and understanding who you are. And I use very simple psychology, value cycle. If I know myself, then I can understand you and our differences, our uniqueness. I get to know you. Therefore, we create the we that is around us. And the Global Chamber does that really well, I believe. And that's why I feel very different to many other networks I belong to. I feel myself. But it is getting used to yourself and knowing you can just be, um, you could be tackled. I want to share one story where I was having a conversation with a man who ran a very strong breakthrough session, and he was quite aggressive in his approach. And I didn't really like his nature, but I loved the content. I was slightly, in conflict about that, but we were sitting having a breakfast meeting on the second day, and he barked at me literally. I mean, it was so funny because it was I this, I this, I this, I'm wonderful, I'm amazing, blah blah blah. And then he paused and he said, "So, Pauline." So I went into a slight conversation, literally very tangential, because he wanted to do some business with me. And he literally said to me, "Pauline, I don't think you understand. We're not having a conversation. I'm talking at you." And it was the first time that had ever happened to me. So I was inside, I was really annoyed, but outside, I didn't show it. I just sort of smiled. And I said, "Well, your program is really good. Whether we do business together will depend on my clients." And then I stopped talking. So I grabbed my cup of tea, was very calm. And he took that as a yes. They stood up, shook my hand, and said, "I think we understand each other," and walked off. I never did business with him. But it's about choosing your authentic moment to just be yourself. And although I was annoyed inside, I learned such a lesson that day, is that if I wanted to, I would have to deal with him in a different way than I might do somebody else. So it was a characteristic plus a gender thing, maybe, it doesn't matter. It's about being authentic in that moment. But looking at the half of the world that's women, I want us to be able to raise the understanding and the value of women, so that every woman can be authentic in every situation, even a potentially uh, dangerous situation, uh, where I think, Nima, you were alluding to that, in some cultures, women are extremely challenged to the point of being abused, and that we need to stand in our strength in those situations and across the world support each other to ensure that women are really valued. So if we're going to be joint custodians of the world, we need to be truly, truly valued. Would anybody else like to comment? Vanita, you come on, Cameron. Hi.
Hi. Yeah, very good conversation. And I can go with everything that everybody has said so far. What I think is, as women too, we need to be comfortable with being misunderstood. So I think we can be our authentic self, but we need to be comfortable with being misunderstood. We need to, because like you said, everybody is unique, and you have to know your uniqueness and you own your uniqueness. And once you've done that, then you'd be comfortable with yourself, because we can learn from everybody. Everybody have something to offer. We can learn. It's either a blessing or a lesson. And we just have to recognize that. So we have to not judge, be comfortable with being misunderstood. And then we would find out that, like minds attract each other, and we can always learn from people. So I think, yeah, it's a great conversation so far. And everybody adds value to whatever they're doing or whatever they have to say, but it's just listening and, you know, not be judgmental about it. And I love, not Dana, was it Dana? The first person who spoke with her spiritual belief and being a Christian. And I think once you have that ownership too, you kind of see things differently and you just listen and go with it. Just go with the flow.
Thank you, thank you. So it's very much about being authentic, owning ourselves, knowing ourselves in difficult situations, and I think one of the things that I've learned is that we don't need to, if we can get out of a difficult situation physically, by stating, you know, almost, I agree to disagree, you know, I understand your perspective, it's not mine, but I need to move on and not go into a battle. And that's what I perceived as, you know, often what women have done with the gender equality march is we've got into battles which have caused us harm and damage. And this is why I focus on harmony. How can we be part of the table conversation, be part of the orchestra? You know, we could be the violin or the percussion or the drums, but we need all the pieces, and we need to work out what the music is that we're going to share. Thank you, Zazie, for being here, and let's keep in touch. And Zazie's put her contacts in the chat. Thank you. I think for me, it's also the question I want to ask is how comfortable are we with compliments? Because you know, women often throw back compliments. Oh no, or they get embarrassed or whatever. Is to stand into a compliment when it's given, and to give compliments is something that I've practiced more and more, is to give a compliment and make sure that it's grounded in a common sense approach. It's not airy fairy. It's like in a work situation, saying to somebody, you know, I love the way you present things because you always make us feel at home, or you feel us, or make it so that it's an active compliment as opposed to the cheesy compliments, which often make us feel uncomfortable. Don't define the compliment, indeed say thank you. Absolutely. I think, are you on mute, Gloria? Gloria, you're on mute. You're on mute?
Now
Oh.
I am. I meant, that was a misspell. I meant don't deny the compliment.
Absolutely.
Just say thank you. Too many women deny compliments.
Absolutely.
Don't
And
you
I think,
agree?
I agree. And I think that's really important. And also to give them, it's like sharing a smile. I always smile when I'm on screen. I never not smile, unless it's something very serious, obviously. But I think it's about being engaged in the moment of a conversation. So even when that guy said to me, we're not having a conversation, I didn't stop my pleasing countenance. I just paused, and I was doing things inside which I didn't show outside. And it was interesting because I said to his partner, business partner, I said, I won't work with him, but I'll work with you because your content's good. And I did. But I think we don't need to work with people who don't respect us. And as long as we respect them, but we don't need to hate them either. We just go to another point of view. So we all have perceptions, perspectives, and preferences. And really understanding that as we share in a magical conversation, this is in my book, is we share without judgment. We base it on experience. So in my experience of the topic X, Y, and Z, we don't get angry, we can get passionate, and we don't try and control the outcomes before we get to a place where it's suitable to. And I want to give you an example. Thank you for being here, those who have to leave now. But just a quick example, one of my colleagues in South Africa, she works in a government tech business. And when she was working at the top level, and she's Black South African, she always fought with the men. And when I explained to her that fighting with the men was not going to put you in a good place, but actually find the intuitive, soft men and make a relationship with them. So I have a gender dynamics archetypes where I just have two types of men, the ruler and the philosopher. So if you get in touch with the philosopher, he's more likely to be sensitive to your needs. The ruler, you just need to listen to his agenda. So she did this, and she said it changed the whole atmosphere of how she was accepted at those top levels. So it is possible to be ourselves and not get angry about the current situation where there is potentially marginalization, but to really look at a conversation. And what I want you to take away from today is how you can have a conversation about being that joint custodian of the world. How can you do things together with other people that share without judgment, without anger, and without coercion? So is there anybody else who would like to make a comment? Valerie, are you, or Patience, or Soshenda? Any of you would like to share anything?
Hi, my name is Valerie. I'm a short introduction. I'm CEO director of a nonprofit. We are called Fruitful Incorporated. And what we do is we partner with grocery stores and farmers markets if they have any excess produce, fresh vegetables, fruits, that sort of thing. We do donate it to hunger relief agencies. And kind of how I came about this mission was really on accident. I was visiting my parents in California when I was living in Austin, Texas at the time, and they just had this fruit tree with hundreds and hundreds of fruits that were just all over the floor. And my first thought, of course, my parents are a bit elder, so they're not going to take the time to really pick their fruit tree. So, my partner and I had asked if we could just pick the entire tree and donate it to the homeless in the Los Angeles area. And when we did, we just heard a lot of just the feedback that we were receiving, just to receive like fresh produce and fruits that homeless has never seen before really became an eye opener. So we just started canvassing the neighborhood, door knocking, offering free fruit picking services where we can donate their fruit, and we will give them a tax receipt for anything that's donated to the food bank. So any of the neighbors don't have to lift a finger, and everyone loved it. So really, the story in a sense where collaborating and just being kind and giving back to those that need it the most, and the people that I've met really along the way. And we had presented that idea to the city, and the city had asked us to register 501c3 nonprofit organization and become a true organization where they can help promote and create a website and everything, which is exactly what we did. And now we've been saving close to 100,000 pounds of fruit in the span of 6 months.
Wow.
Helping hundreds and hundreds of families in need, and met so many wonderful ladies. I volunteered actually at a Food for Life ministry church and an adult school. And I met women that really what we do when you volunteer is that you walk individuals back to their car from the groceries that they received from the church, and then you say a prayer. And the women that I was meeting, I had met a young lady actually who just moved from Chicago, who now is homeless, and she had made a really tough decision when she was in Chicago that when she gave birth to her child, she gave it up for adoption because she had gotten pregnant due to rape. So now she's here in California, living with a Filipino family. And, I want to connect with her more and, ask her, because we are involved with universities. Our main bulk of communication are with 5 universities, like University of Riverside, Cal Poly Pomona, Mount San Antonio College, UC Irvine, and just getting her involved because she's still around 28 years old, and really trying to meet other people is really difficult for her. So again, it's really just lending a helping hand, having a conversation with a stranger, because you really just don't know what they're going through. But hopefully I didn't go off too much on a tangent. That's a short introduction of myself.
Absolutely, Valerie, that's wonderful. Do you want to put your details in the chat? You're part of the chamber, are you?
Yes, yes, I am.
Yes.
I'm actually
Um,
I was a chair member in the Austin area and then deputy director, but now because I'm fully devoted to the nonprofit organization, I am now in California working with the university. So yes, I'm happy to share
okay.
the website here, and then you guys can
Are
take a
you
look.
on the WhatsApp group as well for women leaders?
I don't think so. No, I do
Or
not think
maybe
so.
because Gloria's put some details in the chat that you will maybe find. Can you see it? Okay, that's great. So save the chat, everybody. But do come on the WhatsApp Global Women's Leaders as well, because that's a good way to keep connected. But your story is amazing, Valerie. Thank
Oh,
you.
thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you. It's a pleasure to meet
Excellent.
everyone.
So we're coming up to the hour. I don't know whether Patience or Sochenda you want to put anything in the chat or say something now as we close. Is it,
Hi, this is
yeah.
Shachenda. I agree with everything that is said. It's very important. This is my first time attending the meeting. I am new to the Global Chamber. My experience is very different. I I was born in Southeast Asia. I grew up in France. I now live in the US. I founded, sorry, my throat. Maybe I'm having something. In 2020 I founded a company. It's a tech company, so it's dominated by male. But I work hard. I have employees from all over the world, for example, Bangladesh, Pakistan, India. What I find, my situation is that I am the CFO and founder. They're call me ma'am, and many times because I don't want any status, I keep telling them, just call me by my name, so Chinda. Until now, they still cannot say it. So it has to do with the culture.
Yes.
And yes, and I think like Gloria said, it's when I walk into a room, I don't see myself. I mean, I am a person, it's not a female or a male, and I'm able to hold a conversation and I'm able to get the attention. My partner is a male, but I'm the one, if I'm in a meeting, I am the one talking a lot. And the conversation and the questions are mainly toward asking my opinion. So I think it's the voice,
Yeah.
maybe, and how you say it, it's very specific.
Yes.
Yes,
It's,
and it
it's
shows that you know what you want.
yes. And it's about confidence and
Yes, exactly.
competence.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's the
Oh,
confidence. So, and also your uh, appearance is also important.
oh yes.
Do not neglect, yes. So the confidence inside and the appearance outside, and that's your strength. And also you must have something, the intellectuality must be there as well.
Excellent, excellent points. Thank you,
Yes.
Shazenda. Have you put your details in the chat? Are you on the WhatsApp group, the Women's Leader?
Yes, I am. Yes, I am. I joined
Okay, that's great. We've come to time now, so I don't know, Patience, whether you want to put anything in the chat, but if you're on the WhatsApp group, let's keep this conversation going. And when we meet in January, maybe come with some of your stories about how you have been in that authentic state and really dealt with something that's maybe come into your arena that's been difficult, but you've sailed through it because you're being authentic. Okay. I have to hop up now. We're finishing. Thank you, Gloria, for being online on your picture as well. That's been great. Thank you, Vanita, and all the rest of you. And we'll meet again in January. And let's take this conversation forward and raise the challenge of women to be applauded around the world. And if any of you want to know about my PhD program, I will post it up in the Women Leaders WhatsApp group. Okay.
Okay, awesome. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a
Where are you
wonderful.
based? Which country are you based out of?
I'm in America.
Oh, okay.
So although I'm British, living in Las Vegas. So I'll check in with you on the Women's Leaders WhatsApp group. Thank you, Gloria. Thank you, Vanita,
Okay.
Erica, Patience, Jemima, and Nima. I will see you all soon. Have a wonderful Christmas.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.